David and Paula are planning to divide the pizza shown on the right using the divider-chooser method. David likes pepperoni and sausage pizza equally well, and he likes sausage pizza 4 times as much as mushroom pizza. Paula likes sausage 4 times as much as mushroom pizza, and she hates pepperoni pizza. We will complete parts A through C, and I will bring in the diagrams that are needed for parts A, B, and C as we get to them. First off, when we look at this particular problem, what you need to understand is the fact that this pizza right here has 3 toppings, and those toppings are in separate areas. And this is going to be key to understanding how to work this problem. And it's important to understand exactly how David and Paula are looking at the pizza. So we'll start with David. And we know that David, according to our problem, likes pepperoni and sausage pizza equally well. So I'm going to use P and S equally well. We also see that he likes sausage pizza 4 times as much as mushroom. So that's going to be sausage pizza 4 times as much as mushroom. Which means, since he likes pepperoni and sausage equally well, that he likes pepperoni 4 times as much as mushroom. Now notice that I am using abbreviations for the toppings: P for pepperoni, S for sausage, and M for mushroom. And we're going to use this setup to help us understand how to do the divisions. But let's go ahead and talk about Paula, because she's important in this also, and we need to understand exactly what she likes. She likes sausage 4 times as much as mushroom pizza. So that's going to be sausage 4 times as much as mushroom. And she hates pepperoni pizza, so no pepperoni. Okay? Now, for part A, we see that the cut shown in the figure to the right, is this a possible 50-50 cut that David might have made as a divider? If so, describe the share Paula should choose and give the value as a percent of that share to Paula. If the cut is not a 50-50 cut, give the values of the 2 shares to David. Now, this is all going to be dependent upon the fact that David is the divider and that we are trying to do a 50-50 cut. So let's go ahead and underline that. This is a possible 50-50 cut, and we also note that David is the divider. So now let's go ahead and do our calculations. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to describe the value of the toppings according to David. And since David tells us that he likes pepperoni and sausage equally well, we know that the value of those will have to be the same. We also look very carefully and see that he likes sausage 4 times as much as mushroom, and he likes pepperoni 4 times as much as mushroom. So in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to let mushroom be our base, and we're going to let mushroom be represented by a simple variable x, which means that sausage can then be represented as 4x, since he likes sausage 4 times as mushroom. Likewise, we can do the same thing for pepperoni. So now we can say that the total value, according to David, is equal to the sum of the values of the toppings. So mushroom plus sausage plus pepperoni, which will give us x plus 4x plus 4x, which will be 9x. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this total value of 9x to look at the 2 pieces of the pizza. And we're going to consider side 1. Alright, so S sub 1, side 1. We'll look at this and notice that this has a full serving of pepperoni on it. So let's write that down. And we can also look at this and see that it has a half portion of mushroom, because both of these pieces right here that have mushroom combined together will be a full portion. So we'll write down a half portion, or 1/2 portion. So we now have a full portion of pepperoni and a half portion of mushroom. So what we want to do is we want to discuss what side 1 is worth in terms of David's values. So let's look at side 1. We notice that side 1 is equal to a full portion of pepperoni, so that would be 1p, plus a half portion of mushroom. But remember, up here we know that mushroom is worth x and pepperoni is worth 4x. So we can go ahead and rewrite this as 4x for 1 pepperoni plus 1/2 x for half of the mushroom. And we're going to rewrite this as 4x plus 0.5x. We're going to convert that to a decimal, which means that S1 is 4.5x. Now what we're going to do is we're going to discuss this in terms of the fact that the total value of the pizza, when we originally looked at it in terms of David's valuation of this, is 9x. And since 4.5 is half of 9, we know that this is a 50-50 cut. But just to make sure, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to go ahead and write out a ratio of side 1 to the full pizza. And remember that S1, starting right here, is equal to 4.5x. And the full pizza, the total value, is 9x. And when we go ahead and simplify this, we'll see that the x's will divide out, and we have 4.5 over 9, which is going to be equal to 1/2, which means that this is a 50-50 split. Now, that's in terms of David's side. Let's go ahead and discuss Paula's side. And when I say Paula's side, what I really should say is Paula's valuation. So remember, she likes sausage 4 times as mushroom, or as much as mushroom, and she does not like pepperoni. So the first thing that we notice is, since pepperoni is on side 1, Paula naturally will choose side 2. Now, for Paula's valuation, we're going to go ahead and we're going to determine what the percentage value is. So instead of using x like we did for David, we're going to use y for Paula. Okay? And we note that she does not like pepperoni, and she likes sausage 4 times as much as mushroom. So since mushroom is a single entity here, we'll let m be equal to y. And sausage is going to be 4y, since she likes sausage 4 times as much as mushroom. And then since she hates pepperoni, that one's easy. That's going to be 0y, because it has no value. Which means that for Paula, the value of the pizza in terms of variables will simply be equal to the fact that we have y, so we have mushroom, which is y in this case, plus sausage, which is 4y in this case, plus pepperoni, which is 0y, which gives us a total of 5y. Now we're going to take that and we're going to determine the value of S sub 2, which is the side that Paula chose. So remember that side 2 for this thing is going to consist of a full portion of sausage So we'll write that down. And consists of a half portion of mushroom, just like S1. So therefore we can just simply write S sub 2, or side 2, is equal to 1 full portion of sausage plus 1/2 portion of mushrooms. But remember, and I'll scroll back up so we can look at that, mushroom was equal to y and sausage is equal to 4y. So since we have 1 full portion of sausage, that will be 4y, plus we have 1/2 y for mushroom. And we'll go ahead and rewrite that as 4y plus 0.5y, which is equal to 4.5y in this case. Now, we're going to take that and we're going to do the same kind of ratio that we did previously. Let me just scroll back up so we can look at that. We found the ratio by taking the value of side 1 over the full pizza, and we're going to do that here also. So our ratio will be the value of side 2 divided by the value of the pizza, which in this case is going to be 4.5y, and we're going to divide that by the value of the pizza, which according to Paula is 5y. So once again, when we start to work this problem, we see that the y's will divide out and we'll be left with 4.5 over 5, and we're going to calculate that as a decimal, which is going to be equal to 0.9 or 90%. And remember, this is the value to Paula. Okay. Now, we're going to look at part B of this particular problem. Okay, part B. Is the cut shown in the figure to the right a possible 50-50 cut that David might have made as the divider? If so, describe the share Paula should choose and give the value as a percent of that share to Paula. If the cut is not a 50-50 cut, give the values of the two shares to David. Okay, well, in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this new cut, but we're going to use the same logic that we used previously. And so we once again have P is equal to 4x, which is pepperoni, S sausage is equal to 4x, and M mushroom is also equal to x in this case. So we know that if we add the value, we have 4x plus 4x plus x, which is going to equal 5x. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the division. And let's look at side number 1. Side 1 has a full portion of mushroom on it, and it has a half portion of pepperoni on it. So let's go ahead and write that out as an equation, or I should say as an algebraic expression. So let's look at side number 1. So this is equal to a full portion of mushroom, and we're going to add to that a half portion of pepperoni. So M, remember, is equal to x, so this will be equal to x plus 1/2 times the value of pepperoni. And remember that pepperoni is equal to 4x, so that means that I'm going to have x plus 2x and that will be equal to 3x. So now let's just hold on to that for a moment as our valuation of side 1, and let's go ahead and look at side 2. We notice that for side 2 I have a full portion of sausage, and then I'm going to have another half portion of pepperoni for this thing. So let's consider side 2. Side 2 is going to be equal to a full portion of sausage, which is S, plus another half portion of pepperoni, which is P. Now remember that S is equal to 4x, and we'll go ahead and write that out. S is equal to 4x, so we have 4x plus 1/2 times a portion of pepperoni, which is, as we noticed before, also equal to 4x. So now what I have is 4x plus 2x, which is equal to 6x, and we see that this value is definitely not the same as that value, so this is not a 50-50 split according to David's valuation. Alright, so now remember that the total value of the pizza, according to David, is 9x. Okay, so let's write that down. So now we're going to talk about the ratio for side 1, and that's going to be equal to 3x over 9x, because that's the value of side 1 over the total value. Now the x's will divide out, leaving me with 3 going into itself once, and then 3 going into 9 3 times, which gives me a fraction of 1/3, which is approximately equal to 33%. Therefore, the other side, side 2, will all have to be equal to 66%, or 67%. Because if we went ahead and actually did the division of 6x over 9x, we divide out the x's. This would divide, 3 goes into 6 2 times, 3 goes into 9 3 times, and that's going to give me 2/3, which will round to 67%. So now that's the value for both sides of the pizza based upon this division. And that means that to David, side 2 is worth more than side 1. And this is based upon how he ranks the toppings. So now we're going to look at part C. Is the cut shown in the figure to the right a possible 50-50 cut that David might have made as a divider? If so, describe the share Paula should choose and give the value as a percent of that share to Paula. If the cut is not a 50-50 cut, give the values of the 2 shares to David, round to the nearest percent. Now, what you're going to think when you look at this is that's obviously not a 50-50 cut because I haven't divided the pizza in half. And this is true. But we're not basing it on cutting the pizza in half. Rather, we're talking about dividing the value of the pizza based upon the values assigned to the toppings by the player. In this case, David. And the first thing that we're going to look at is the fact that when we divide the pizza like so that we have one section that has sausage, one section that has pepperoni, and one section that has mushrooms, we have divided this equally 3 ways. And remember that a circle has 360 degrees in it, and if we divide that by 3, we're going to end up with 120 degrees, which means that the angles that we're talking about here are all 120 degrees. So when we look at this, we go ahead and say, okay, this one right here has 45 degrees, and that's going to be pepperoni, which means that this angle, or this part of S sub 1, is going to be 120 degrees minus 45 degrees. And that'll be 75 degrees right here. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to remember that this one right here is 120 degrees. And we're going to assume that this one is split in half. And this will be 60 degrees here and 60 degrees here. And so now we can go ahead and assign values similar to what we did previously. We're going to use David's preferences. Okay, so let's go ahead and calculate the value for side 1. And we remember that this is pepperoni and this is sausage. We know that sausage is 4x. We know that pepperoni is 4x. But in this particular case, we've divided the sausage in half. So that means that we can have 1/2 times sausage. And another way of looking at that is saying 0.5 times sausage. Or we can also, and we can also look at it as 60 degrees over 120 degrees, which will give us a ratio. And that's what we're going to do for the pepperoni part. Remember that pepperoni is 75%, so we're adding 75% of the pepperoni. Well, in order to do that, we're going to have to make a fraction out of that. So let's go ahead and look at what we have. We're going to have 1/2 times the value of the sausage, which is 4x. And we're going to add to that 75% of the pepperoni. And I have to apologize for that. I said 75%. That should be 75 degrees of the pepperoni. And that's why I was talking about 60 degrees over 120 degrees. So 75 degrees of the pepperoni. To make a ratio, we're going to take 75 degrees and put it over 125 or 120 degrees, because that's how much pepperoni we initially had. And we're going to multiply that by the worth of the pepperoni, which in this case is 4x. And now what we have is a statement that tells us what side 1 is worth in terms of David. So this one right here, 1/2 times 4x, is simply going to be 2x. And we're going to add to that. Well, let's go ahead and determine what this particular ratio of 75 degrees over 120 degrees is. And when we calculate that, that's going to yield the following, 0.625. And it will not have a unit because the degrees themselves will divide out. So we'll have 0.625. And we're still multiplying it by this 4x. Now let's go ahead and simplify that. So we still have S sub 1 is equal to the 2x here. And we're going to add to that 0.625 times 4, which is going to be 2.5 times x. And then we go ahead and add these together, and we get that side 1 is 4.5x. Now remember, our initial total value was 9x. This is half of the original value. And since it's half of the original value, that means that this is a 50-50 split. And remember, that's a 50-50 split according to David. And now we need to discuss Paula. Okay, now remember, this right here, this is Paula's values. And since she hates pepperoni, she's going to choose the piece of pizza that has the least amount of pepperoni on it, since both sides have pepperoni. Therefore, Paula will choose side 2. Now we need to determine, according to the problem, and let's scroll back up so we can look at it. If so, describe the share Paula should choose and give the value as a percent of that share to Paula. And that's what we're going to do next, using this information. Okay, so now what's the value for side 2 that Paula chooses? Well, remember, side 2 here is made up of pepperoni, and we'll say 45 degrees of pepperoni. And we're going to add to that a full serving of sausage, which is this. So we'll just call that S. And then we're going to add to that a half serving. I'm sorry, this should be mushrooms. This is mushrooms, not sausage. And we're going to add a half serving of sausage. Now, it doesn't really matter what this value is actually going to be equal to, because in the grand scheme of things, no matter how much pepperoni is on there, it's worth absolutely nothing to Paula. So we'll call this 0y. Then, as I said, we're adding a full serving of mushrooms, and in this case, mushrooms are worth just y. And then we're going to add a half serving of sausage. Now remember, sausage in this particular case is 4y, so this will be 1/2 times 4y. And now let's go ahead and simplify and combine, and we'll have y plus 2y is 3y. Now remember that her total value for the pizza from up here, this is going to be your total value, will be equal to 5y, because you add these 3 values together. So that means that the value for side 2 that Paula chooses will be equal to 3y over 5y, which will be equal to the following, because the y's will divide out and you'll be left with the fraction 3/5, which we will go ahead and convert into a percent, which in this case will be 60%. So that's the value according to Paula.